K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com. The leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98talk.com.
This is JD and Stacy with K98 Talk. We're here to talk to you about TPA. You may have called it Fast Track, TPA, or Trade Authority. Whatever it is called, it is a terrible idea and is coming up for a vote as early as June 11th.
Barack Obama is negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership under an unprecedented veil of secrecy. Our congressmen who view it are threatened with legal action if they disclose details of the documents to the American public.
Fast Track or Trade Promotion Authority, if passed, will prevent Congress from making amendments, debating the provisions, and allow passage of trade agreements with a simple majority.
There is no conservative case for Fast Track Trade Promotion Authority. Our systems of checks and balances demands that Congress weigh and debate trade agreements, demand that Congress does their job.
For information about Trade Promotion Authority and what it really means, visit coalitionforastrongamerica.com and then call your congressman and demand they vote no on TPA when it comes to the floor of the House. This has been a public service announcement by JD and Stacy of K98 Talk.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to admit a mistake. We're paying off election debts to those on the take. Attorney General's lying even while
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
All right, folks, well, happy Thursday. We've made it. Tomorrow is the day they can't take away from us. Yes, the beginning of the weekend. Well, for some of us. For those of you who work odd jobs where you have weird days off, I do apologize, but I get really happy about this one because it's been quite some time since I've had a day job where I work Monday through Friday. So for all of you who are in the same situation that I am, and if today is the day before your Friday, take a deep breath, sit back, relax, and realize that we're almost there for the end of the week. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you that may be tuning in for the first time, you are listening to K98 Talk. I am Rick Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, and you can find this show, if you ever want to listen to it when it's not live, in a variety of places. Our home account is on Spreaker. You can always search K98 Talk there. You can also find this particular show on Stitcher, as well as SoundCloud, and also iHeartRadio. This particular show is also broadcast on AMFM247.com. Starting next week, it will air 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 Eastern. For those of you listening on there, you're hearing this show now, and it's going to sound kind of odd because it's actually pre-recorded for you, but they don't have anything as late as I run in my time slot. And if I move to the one eventually I plan on moving to, they won't have anything at all. So definitely will unfortunately, no matter what, have to be rebroadcasted there. Now, here in a moment, I do have a special guest joining us. He'll be with us for the entirety of the show, Mr. Patrick Fornari, the author of Commoner Sense, which is a book, and I'll let him give you more information on what gave him the idea for the book, where you can find it. I do recommend picking it up. I've read through it once already. Unfortunately, we weren't able to schedule the interview fairly recently to the time that I read through it, and I've been cramming my brain full of all the TPA stuff, so I'm about halfway through it again, but we will still be discussing the book, and I do want to give Patrick a little bit of an apology up front. I normally do not interview authors until I've read through the book at least 3 times, but I've really had a hectic schedule lately. But anyway, we will have him on here with us in just a few minutes. He's actually with us now. He he can only hear me right now. So yes, I get to torment you for just a couple more minutes. Anyway, folks, as a reminder, the new Thursday night lineup on K98 Talk, which started last week, starts off with myself, otherwise known as the crappy opening act. I do run at 7 Eastern. Then we have Red Nation Rising Radio. They will be here at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. my time, 8 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you tune in for that one. JD and Stacy, the folks that you heard the promo for earlier, they have been knee-deep fighting tooth and nail with the Coalition for a Strong America to help get the word out about TPA. So they have asked me to put up a replay for them this evening because they are still knee-deep in the fray. So we will be re-airing this evening the show that I sat in for JD, who was ill on Sunday, where I actually heard more about TPA than I ever knew, which honestly scares me because with as much as I am involved and I try to pay attention, with so much going on with it that I didn't know, it scares me as to what the average American probably doesn't know. But at this point, because I have burned now about 6 minutes blathering like an idiot, we're going to go ahead and bring Mr. Patrick Fornari on the air with us. And Patrick, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, Rick. I really appreciate it.
It is not a problem at all, sir. It's always an honor to have a chance to talk to someone who is putting himself on the line, much like we do here. I've read, like I said, I have read through your book before. I am in the process of reading through it again. Again, thank you for the copy as well. And I have to say, it is a really good read. Unfortunately, I didn't have as much time as I thought I was going to have yesterday, or I had planned on having more of it read than I have. Now, since I want folks to actually buy the book, we're really not going to go into too much of it unless you want to, but I do want to at least discuss maybe what gave you the idea for the book, what had basically inspired you, and then we'll get into probably some topics of the day just so we can kind of see where you align on that. And for the record, just stated for this, other than a couple of emails to set up how we were going to contact one another, you and I have not really spoken or prepped anything up until this moment. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Rick.
Okay. I do that on purpose because I've been accused in the past when I was heavily doing guests, and it's another reason why I don't do them as often as I used to, unless it's somebody that I really, really want to talk to. I've been accused of coaching my guests before, so I just want everybody to know for the record that we have, other than me commenting about your book and you asking to do the interview and us figuring out how we were going to do that, we really have not spoken much about the book before now. So without further ado, folks, this is Mr. Patrick Fornari, author of Commoner Sense, The Working Person's Guide to America. Patrick, why don't we start out by hearing a little bit about you?
Well, I'm originally from the Chicago area. I was born in Northwest Indiana. I left there at a fairly early age, probably 19, 20 years old, worked some construction around that area, then went into the western United States and worked on heavy industrial jobs such as coal burning plants, nuclear plants, things like that, walking steel all day, a few hundred feet in the air. It was quite dangerous work. I learned to build and frame houses after that, then went into finished carpentry and had a fairly extensive career in Aspen and through California, Santa Barbara, La Jolla, San Diego area, etc. And one day was offered 5 months of work in the Caribbean, which was about 20 years ago, and I haven't worked in the U.S. since, and I've been in the Caribbean since then, basically.
In the Caribbean, I have to admit I'm a little bit jealous about that.
Well, a lot of people say I live in paradise, but I have to tell you, Rick, after 20 years out of the country, my fondness and appreciation for America has grown. And having been born in the United States, I will tell you that my idea of paradise will be returning to America with enjoying all the full rights that our Constitution and our founding affords me.
Well, that's a great thought, but that does lead me to a pretty interesting question. You said you've been out of the country now for about 20 years. Have you recently have you returned at all over that time frame, or have you been gone the entire time?
Yes, I do return periodically. Yes, I do, but for fairly short periods, 3 to 5 days maybe. So a couple times, 3 times a year, maybe something like that. Yes, I do.
Okay, just checking. Now, since it's kind of one of those things where, it's like when you don't see family members for a long time and you suddenly see them again and you realize how much they've changed. When you find yourself in the Caribbean and then you return to America, have you noticed positive changes, negative changes, little of both?
Well, as you, Rick, I'm deep into it. The news, the politics, current events. I am able to keep up with them here. Basically, have American TV broadcast, radio broadcast shows such as yours. So, and I read a lot. So I am up to date with things. So maybe the changes aren't quite as dramatic as if I was completely withdrawn from the news of the day and what's going on in the States. But I do notice shifts culturally, I think, for the most part.
And what are some of those cultural shifts that you feel you've noticed, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a kind of a polarization that catches me off guard. Growing up in the Chicago area, you kind of can stand on a street corner and eventually, through talking to somebody, after you get through a few names, you can eventually get to the part where, you know what, my cousin knows your brother-in-law, that type of thing. And now I think that people, partially due to technology, but also due to kind of an icing of the conversation between Americans, especially over our current politics. We've been quite divided. There's some very frayed feelings out there and some very thin skin that you really, really have to be aware of. And I find sometimes that maybe my normal demeanor that I would be used to from growing up in an area like Chicago isn't often well received sometimes in general or polite conversation.
Well, yeah, you actually mentioned that in the book. Actually, there was a line, I'm not going to be able to completely quote it at the moment, but there was a line that you mentioned that, growing up, as you had gotten older, you took some rather common phrases like, it's not fair, or these are my rights, and there was something else that you mentioned in there too, but you said as you had gotten older, you would occasionally pepper them with the curse word that you felt that they afforded. But you mentioned that one of the things that you always kind of figured out was if you do too much of any one thing, it's never good. So it was always one of those things where you simply used it as kind of an emphasis or an exclamation point, if you will. And I think the same thing is kind of happening when it comes to politics anymore, because everything has gotten so politically correct that if anybody uses any language that we don't agree with, all of a sudden we're so offended that we just shut down. And that's one of the things that drives me crazy is the First Amendment does not give you the right to not be offended. It gives you the right to not listen if you choose not to listen, but it doesn't mean that you should go run and whine to somebody because they said a word that you don't like or because they said something that you don't agree with. One of the things that I think is now completely lost in this country is most of the time we should be fighting for the people that we disagree with to be able to keep their right to voice their opinions and then give a healthy debate about why we disagree with them. Instead, it's as soon as somebody says something that you don't agree with, and it happens on Twitter and everywhere else, all of a sudden you're added to these lists like a bunch of my friends have been listed with, lists that exist like have this person banned within 48 hours. I mean, what has happened to the country? Are you just from your outside looking in perspective and you're keeping up? What do you think are some of the things that have triggered this drastic shift in this polarization? Because you're right, everything is polarized anymore.
Well, 110 years of progressivism incrementally on the march in the country hasn't helped. You have to keep in mind, Rick, that in my mind, if you want to boil it down to a simple idea about this, most liberals and Democrats are looking for the argument, and I truly believe that most conservatives are looking for the solutions, and that's where the problems start. As long as the argument is going on, and they're kind of doing their smoke and mirrors little, ceaseless complaining, we don't really get to talk about the meat of issues or the solutions, do we?
Well, no, you have a good point there. I mean, it does seem like any time, and I've noticed this myself, and I mean, don't get me wrong, because I have friends that I do consider liberals. I don't necessarily consider them progressives, and in my opinion, there is a difference. But when you are dealing with a progressive that you're trying to have a discussion with, it seems like they always want to lead with emotion, and when you try to counter their argument with some sort of factual-based thing, the first thing they usually scream is racist. And it's like commonplace anymore. No matter what you're talking about, the first thing they want to do is basically throw some sort of a label at you, because they know that we're preconditioned that when we start hearing words like that, we instantly shut down, because nobody wants to be considered a racist or a homophobe or anything else, but you still should be able to give your opinion without being attacked. And that's one of the things that I think we have lost in this country, is the art of civil disagreement.
Well, I wrote an article recently. I'm sure you remember the comedian Don Rickles, right? He's still alive, actually. He's been an actor, comedian, things like that. I grew up in that world, and my neighborhood and school was very much reminds me of how he was. And if you tell someone today, well, you understand that this guy made fun of everybody, their color, religion, nobody was spared. And people look and they, well, gosh, he must be the most horrible man in the world. Well, he's not. He's one of the most beloved people ever in entertainment or Hollywood. And you say, well, how could that be? It's very simple. He served in World War II. He put the issues of the old world, I talk a lot about the old world in commoner sense, he put the issues and the prejudices of the old world behind him. And if you were lucky enough to be in the room with Rickles and he made fun of you, if you were the target of his jokes, it was better than having the INS come along and stamp "Made in America" on your forehead. Okay? Rickles accepted everybody and understood we were Americans first, not hyphenated Americans. And that ability to laugh at ourselves, to put the old world behind us, Rick, gave us a super tensile strength that we now have lost, and the weakness is showing.
Yeah, I mean, something like that came up not too long ago at my day job. There was, and I don't even remember what it was now, but there was something, oh, I know what it was. A friend of mine was explaining that she was having an issue with a friend of hers that liked to use the N-word too much. And it was one of those things where, because this was a white lady that was speaking to a black lady when she had made the comment, and she kept using it over and over and over again. And it reminded me of the old Saturday Night Live bit with Richard Pryor and Chevy Chase, where they're doing the job interview and they're basically doing word association. And by the end of it, it looked like Richard Pryor was wanting to kill Chevy Chase. But it was funny, and it was meant to be funny, and I think that's part of the thing that we have lost. We take everything so seriously now. Everything is always serious. Everything is always urgent. Everything is always of the utmost importance, and because of that, we no longer know how to laugh at our idiosyncrasies. And the simple fact of the matter is, I think even though if anybody looking from this time would go back and look at those older shows from Saturday Night Live and everything else, they'd be like, oh my God, that was the most racist we were the most racist country ever back then. And no, we really weren't, because we brought it to the forefront using humor and it was dealt with, but now we can't do that anymore, so nobody's laughing about it anymore, so they're always angry on the inside. And I think that's something that's coming through more often than not anymore, is this underlying anger when it comes to things like economic class, because we never used to have a class system in this country. It's like you said in the book, you may have grown up in the middle class, but it really had nothing to do with who you were. You knew it didn't matter where you landed in that spectrum. You knew some people that were richer than you knew some people that weren't richer than you, but your basic needs were met, so you were rich enough. And that used to be what the core of this country was. We didn't have this, well, I'm lower upper middle class, and I'm lower middle class, and this person has more money than me. And it's one of the things that drives me crazy, because there's a comparison if you really stop and think about it. And it's a story that I honestly think it might have been my granddad that was telling me something that his father had told him, because my granddad's almost 100 now. So he was alive when automobiles really first started becoming prevalent, and then he watched them start improving. And one of the times when I think he was probably maybe 10 or 12, him and his dad were walking down the street, And this guy comes driving by in this really, really nice new car. I mean, it was like, I don't know what type of car it was, I don't remember, but it was a really, really nice car. And my granddad looked at my dad, or his dad, and he looked at, and my great-grandfather looked back at my grandfather and said, son, in this country, if you apply yourself and you work hard enough, eventually, if that's what you want, you can get one of those cars. And nowadays, the exact opposite happens. You see a father walking with a son, and they see somebody driving down the street in a limousine. The father looks at the son and says, don't worry, son. He makes more money than us, but we'll get it from him somehow.
Well, that's a good point. And my point in the book about being born into the middle class and kind of looking around and going, oh, well, this all seems in order. I can deal with this. What you didn't know at an early age is that our Constitution and our system of government and capitalism indeed has put more food on more tables and more roofs over more heads than any other system in history. America is very, very unique on the timeline or the arc of history. That's true American exceptionalism. It's a different thing to say, is America an exceptional country, or what is the definition of the term American exceptionalism? The thing is, we are the different thing on that timeline. We're different than what we used to have, being ruled by kings and the sovereign to peasant relationships. We don't have that. America was set up the other way around. And basically, in the last 5,000 to 7,000 years of so-called civilization, it was the first time that happened. And I didn't grow up with that jealousy thing, Rick. I grew up with the admiration thing. I didn't say, oh, I don't like that person because they're wealthy. I used to think, I wonder how they got that wealthy. I'd like to know. If I could talk to them for a few minutes, maybe I can get a piece of that. Maybe they'll educate me. Okay, and that's how my parents were about things too. It wasn't all about money. It was the fact that we were in America, and we did live in a country that afforded you opportunities and freedom. And we have lost some of that, and all this kind of vengeful politics of division, this banana republic style rhetoric that's yielded towns like Baltimore. Now we have basically little banana republics spread across the country. It's really not doing us any good, Rick. You have to realize no one can actually kill or murder America from the outside, Rick. We can only commit suicide. And some days I feel like we are.
Very slowly, very painfully, and unfortunately I happen to agree with you. Honestly, I think if our founding fathers were alive today, they'd walk away and start over. I'm not even playing. They'd just be like, okay, we gave it to you, you screwed it up, we're going to go over here and build it again. You have fun.
Well, yeah, they might. Yeah, as you saw in the book, I don't advocate for armed or violent revolution, but they might.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they went to war over, what was it, a 2% tax increase on one particular item, I think, if memory serves.
Yeah, it was 1 or 2%. That's right, on tea. That's right.
And that's one of the things, I don't know, I know you're outside of the country, but one of my favorite shows, and I don't get a chance to watch much national TV, but one of the ones I actually liked that I wasn't sure I was going to like was Sleepy Hollow on Fox. And I think it was actually in the very first episode, it was either the first or the second one, the gentleman playing Ichabod Crane's character was looking at the receipt, and he made this exact comment. Oh my lord, they charged me 15% taxes. On this single order, they charged me 15% taxes. Our founding fathers went to war for 2% tax on tea, and you guys are taxed every day.
Exactly. And obviously there are a lot of other factors that went into that. The event, always referred to as the Boston Tea Party, obviously things led up to that, and that tea tax. There are things that eventually broke the camel's back. Well, but the camel had been getting loaded on for a long time.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the tea tax was that final straw that finally did break the camel's back, because you're right, they were being loaded upon. I mean, in that time in history, it's starting to mirror some of the things that we're going through now, because we're now suddenly being spied on everywhere we turn. I'm sure It would probably terrify me just because I do this one little show that gets a little corner of an audience that I'm probably on some sort of a watch list somewhere. Speaking of which, I actually know that to be true because I've actually been contacted from some camps of the folks that are now announcing for presidency, and they've been afraid to come on my show because they're afraid I'm going to call them to task, which I will, especially for all of them that have been lining up and getting ready for the TPA vote. Because we have way too many people that are interested in that. We may actually touch on that when we come back, but at this point, it is about time for us to go ahead and take a really quick break, folks. This is Rick Robinson. You are listening to America Off the Rails, and I am with special guest Michael Furnari, the author of Commoner Sense, The Working Person's Guide to America. We'll be right back with you after these short commercials. Don't go anywhere.
Now's the time to get involved. The Coalition for a Strong America is the only conservative grassroots organization meeting with congressmen and high-level staffers on a regular basis. Stephanie Scruggs, co-chairman, is concerned about the upcoming TPA vote.
First of all, what you need to know is that fast-track TPAs are still before Congress, where Congress gives their power to negotiate international trade agreements and treaties to the president.
She recommends contacting your representative and telling them to vote no on this measure. It comes to the floor this Thursday, June the 11th. For more information, go to coalitionforastrongamerica.com and let your voice be heard. This has been a special announcement from K98 Talk.
Attention Patriots, Red Nation Rising Radio is about to begin.
Please return your Republic to its original position and prepare for takeoff.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of liberservative conservatism.
Where no one is safe, and no one is spared, not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring
right
Ebola
anyway.
radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote.
Just do your rant. Let's pop out of the segment.
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com.
For our own cause, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political courageous will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, bless you, pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets cause there's no one free. You cannot make a move now that the NSA can see. Don't expect equality, respect for fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way.
No problem at all, Rick.
All right. So, again, this is Rick Robinson. You are listening to America Off the Rails, and I'm with special guest Patrick Fernari, author of Commoner Sense. Okay, so we kind of started getting into more kind of the current political spectrum type of stuff. So I have a question. As far as the whole administration currently, for, against, on the fence, ready to run them out with pitchforks? Just asking.
Oh, boy. As you know from reading the book, I concentrate on principles and ideology and facts and my opinion and some antidotes. And I don't mention really any politicians in the book.
I know, that's why I'm asking you now.
What's that?
I said, I know, that's why I'm asking you now.
Okay, so there's only one that I mentioned. And our president, I remember when Mr. Obama first came on the scene and he was making national news. He gave that speech in 2004, or 2004, I believe it was. And everybody said, boy, you have to watch this guy. And I said, listen, you really have to watch this guy. Okay, because I'm from the Chicago area, and he's this kind of hybrid of the Chicago machine politics and super progressive. This stuff is ingrained in him, and he was the last type of president that we needed. He's not qualified to be president. I don't agree with him on virtually just everything, and I cannot wait till he is out of office, Rick.
Well, you did mention a couple of times that since you had listened to the show, you felt like we aligned pretty well. I have to agree with pretty much everything that you've just said. The worst part about it is I'm eternally an optimist. You wouldn't know it from the way I talk on the air, but I do at some point hope the rest of America wakes up and we can still turn the corner. And I have to say, in his original, the 2008 run-up, I fought him tooth and nail every step of the way. But once I knew who won, when he made his victory speech and started talking about how he was going to do all of these things that no other president had done, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe him with every fiber of my being because I wanted to think that maybe, just maybe, everything that I was afraid of about this guy could not possibly be true. But the problem is, everything that I was afraid of has pretty much come to pass. I mean, he mentioned that he was going to do things like, have the... because he told everybody up front he was going to find a way to do healthcare. He told everybody they'd be able to listen or watch and listen to the hearings on C-SPAN. The documents would be up for 30 days. Everybody would have time to read through them. Everybody would know what was in it before it was ever voted on. And then it turned into, well, we have to pass it to find out what's in it. And that's the thing that drives me crazy because I do have, as I said, more liberal friends, and we even have a couple of liberal hosts over here because I don't want it just to be a conservative echo chamber. But one of them was pointing out all the time that particular line was taken out of context. Well, the same thing is happening now, and we now have a conservative, supposed, running the House, and he's now basically using the same line, which is, in order for everybody to find out what's in TPP, you'll know once we pass it. That was the same thing he was railing against when he wasn't the guy in power.
Well, two things there. The reason that you had your attitude towards Obama's first election is very simple. It's because you're an American, and you wanted America to do good. I think the majority of the country, once they knew the results of the election, felt exactly the same way, Rick. Okay? But now, after lie after lie after lie, after more propaganda than I've ever seen in my life, and of course this trade deal is horrible. You know what, Rick? I wouldn't even care if this trade deal was the best trade deal ever drafted, most beneficial to the United States in history, was just a gem. The fact they're hiding it in the basement, having people review it, not letting us see it, not letting it go out for a 30-day comment period, which they're supposed to, all of those things, the fact that it's too long, if you read the Federalist Papers, Madison, etc., if the average person, it's one of the reasons I wrote the book, it's for average people. It's short, it's affordable, and it gets the idea of America across. If the average person can't understand the bill or the law, don't pass it. Don't bring it to the floor of the House or the Senate. Don't throw bills that are thousands of pages in our face and say, you'll see what's in it after we pass it.
Yeah, I mean, that whole concept makes absolutely no sense to me, especially when you have the President of the United States saying that, especially, I mean, this started with Obamacare. That was his big thing. He told everybody, don't worry, this isn't going to be something we're going to ram down your throats. It's not anything that we're going to do this, that, or the other on, and you're going to be able to see everything every step of the way. And then it turned into a bunch of backroom deals. And don't get me wrong, because Grouchy, another host over here, the host of the Conservative Curmudgeon Show, actually interviewed Ambassador John Bolton at the 2015 Southern Republican Leadership Conference. And he mentioned that a lot of the TPA framework was actually started under George Bush. I don't care if it would have been George Bush. If I would have known everything that I know about TPP now, I would have been railing against it as much as I have been the Patriot Act since the day it was signed, because that's not what America is about. These backroom, quiet deals that nobody's paying attention to, that get basically looked over because of all the distraction media. I mean, I swear, it's like we're living in the decline of Rome, because it's like the entire administration has adopted this bread and circuses policy when it comes to the media. Keep throwing distraction after distraction after distraction out to the American people so they don't know what we're doing behind the scenes, and that's exactly what it feels like. And sadly, it's felt like that for even a little bit longer than this particular administration, but they've taken it and moved it up to an art form.
I was able to catch some of the Sunday show that you sat in on, and the information that you put across absolutely floored me. But this isn't the half of it, okay? That's something that's hidden in a bill. I think that those things have probably gone on for decades. I'm not saying it's right, but that's one way that government has been underhanded. The other one is this. Our elected officials hide behind bureaucrats and bureaucracies. So whether it's the EPA, the IRS, whoever it is, they say, well, you know, that bureaucracy passed that law. It isn't voted on. It's that our representatives don't know what the heck is going on. They hide behind all this stuff. And then they have taken this to another level, where the President of the United States or the Secretary of State or Susan Rice or John Kerry, whoever it may be, just simply come on television and lie, bald-faced lies. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, just lie straight into the camera to the American people. And this, to me, is absolutely appalling.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and it's become an art form. I mean, you know, and it's not just the Secretary of State. They've done it with Ambassador Rice. They sent her around with the talking points after Benghazi that everybody knows was a blatant lie, but nobody wants to call anybody on the carpet for it. We have the whole situation, again, with now the TPP, where the president is, there's nothing harmful about the TPP. Well, really, if there's nothing harmful about it, why can't we see it? This is the same thing you tried to tell us about Obamacare, but remember, it was supposed to originally save us money, supposed to save us about $2,500. Then it was supposed to be deficit neutral. Then they said, well, it'll probably cost about $1,000 per family. Then it was $2,500. Now, last count, I think it's somewhere around $3,500 and still climbing. I mean, I've even heard recent reports here from my state that they expect insurance premiums over the next 12 months to climb anywhere from 11 to 44%, thanks to the issues with the Obamacare situation. And it just all they want to do over and over again is keep basically lulling people back to sleep. And the sad thing is, it seems like it's working, because the only thing anybody really cares about anymore is what's going on with reality TV, or what's going on with Bruce Jenner, or what's going on with even on the other side of the spectrum, what's going on with Duck Dynasty. Look, I like a lot of that stuff, but there needs to be a time when we realize that it's time to put down the remote, time to get off the couch, and it's time to do something. And what scares me about Sunday, as I said before I brought you on, is I am relatively engaged. I'm constantly reading, constantly looking through news, constantly getting stuff from multiple sources, and I had no idea some of the things that were being discussed behind the scenes that are going on with this whole TPP situation. And now there's even another one right behind it, which is the transatlantic deal, which is basically the same mirror framework for the Trans-Pacific, but it's going to be for the other side of the globe, basically. So, I mean, at this point, we're seriously looking at what could amount to basically, if we don't get enough people involved and don't get enough people woken up, we're basically going to wake up one morning and we're no longer going to be a sovereign nation, because part of the things that are hiding in a lot of this documentation is putting us under the guise or the jurisdiction of a world court, which scares me, because most of the people that are involved in the UN, which would make up the World Court, despise capitalism as a whole and think it needs to be eradicated, and we're about to hand ourselves to them and say, please be gentle.
Well, three things, Rick. One, that's why I wrote Commoner Sense, to try to involve people. That's why it's the Working Person's Guide to America. I did the 10 or 12 years of research. I read all the 2.5-inch books. Most people can't afford to go out and buy that $37 book, hardcover, first edition, and read it a couple times and try to get the facts straight or the history straight, okay? So I tried to condense that and do that in the book. The second thing is they've tried this before with the laws of the seas treaties and things like that, where you know, they want to tell our Navy where it can go, when it can go there, or things like the European Union commenting on a death penalty case in Texas. And now the other thing is I want to pick up on something you said about being hopeful and optimistic. You're unlikely to hear this from other authors, Rick, but our Constitution has only lived a kind of half-life, okay? The progressive intrusion or interruption into our constitutional journey has not let us yet fully realize what it can do in its full potential. So that's where the hope comes in. But that only works if we unleash the power of the average person and the average voter to say my voice and vote does matter, because it's been diminished over the last few decades to a really just an astounding degree. It's very weak. And take that power back, employ our Constitution again, get energy independent, get term limits going, get tax reform going, and then you're going to see an America like you've never seen before. And that's where the hope and the optimism comes in my opinion.
All right, so I have a question, sir. When are you running for office, and how can we vote for you?
No. It would be the last thing I would want to do. This was the little thing I could do, to just get my opinion out there about this and do something, because you understand, not being in the U.S., I couldn't be there.
Search the globe for a flavorful spice.
Sorry, occasionally the Spreaker site likes to throw up a random ad.
Okay, no problem. But not being in the U.S., I couldn't be the guy that went out door to door and campaign for somebody, or encourage people to go to vote, or try to get petitions signed for certain things to shut things down or start things up. So my political reach from here was limited, and I thought, well, there is one thing I can do. I mean, literally one day my girlfriend walked by me, and I was reading one of those books, and she looked at me and she said, stop reading them and write one. And it hadn't occurred to me before. And she said, you know as much about it as anybody. Just go ahead and write one and tell them what you think. So I took her advice, and it turned out to be one of the best things I've done, because if anything, I put my thoughts on the record, I got this off my chest, and I have influenced some people. The feedback I get about the book, where people say, gee, you know, you said what I was thinking, I didn't know how to quite put it into words. I'm very grateful for that, because when you do something like this, you don't know if you're going to hit or miss. That was my intention. I was trying to speak to that average working person, and to a degree, that's worked. And for that, I'm just very grateful. Let's put it that way.
All right, and as we actually get to the point where we are going to start winding down the show, because we are just a few minutes away from close, because we actually have to shut it down about 5 minutes early to give time for the next show to come onto the server. Just want to give everybody a reminder, Red Nation Rising is coming up next. They will be live here starting at approximately 9 Eastern, or 8 Eastern, and then JD and Stacy will have a show up, but it will be yours truly sitting in with Stacy for an interview that we did on Sunday, because again, they have been knee-deep in the fray and needed the night off because they're still working hand in hand with Coalition for Strong America to try to continue to get the social media word out on this TPA nightmare. At last news report I heard, they've now pushed the vote back to possibly sometime tomorrow, so it would appear that maybe the social media pressure is working. So thanks to all of you that are helping us get the word out when it comes to that. Now, as we do start winding things down, a couple other things. Just to give everybody an opportunity, where can they find the book? How can they order it? If they want to give you any feedback, how can they reach you?
It's very easy. You can get it on Amazon. You can also go to my Bitly account. It's just, or link. It's just bit.ly/Commoner Sense. You can follow me on Twitter @FenariSense or on Facebook. So it's quite, and I also have a blog that I think some people might find interesting. I put articles on there. That's at commonersense.net, and I also do guest articles for the Magic Morning Star newspaper out of Maine. It's an online newspaper, and I contribute articles to them also.
All right. Wow, you're, I think, almost as busy as I am.
I'm really trying, Rick. I want to get the good word out there. We can turn this thing around. I say that I'm with you. I want to keep that optimism, but I'll openly admit to you, Rick, that sometimes I get a little ground down on what I'm hearing and seeing because it's just it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
I mean,
it really is.
It's not so much that I'm ground down. It's just like I said, the thing that terrified me, and the thing that's gotten me so energized over this last few days, is hearing all of the things that I didn't know about this agreement that's about to come up for a vote. This has been going on for a very, very long time. Some of this started 2 years ago. And we're just now getting to the point where we understand enough of it about how completely scary this is. And oddly enough, and I never thought I would say this, but for the first time in my life, I agree with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And yes, that hurt just a little bit to say.
Well, right. But I mean, I listened to that Sunday show. I listened to part of your rebroadcast, and again, I'm with you. I was completely shocked. The immigration stuff in there, the fact they could bring other countries in without our permission, and again, if it was the perfect deal, when it's done in secret, that doesn't matter. That has nothing to do with our system of government.
No, you're right. It most definitely does not. And I think that was the thing that scared me the most, is I didn't realize that this was going to be what's considered a dockable agreement, which basically means anybody can join in as long as the majority of the folks involved in it say it's okay. We're basically giving our sovereignty away if we agree to something this crazy. And we're about to do this from two separate directions. And ultimately what's going to wind up happening is we're going to find ourselves under the jurisdiction of a world court, and we're not going to know what to do. And nobody really knows about it, or at least they didn't. This week it seems like everything's finally coming to a head and people are finally starting to pay attention. But again, what scares the crap out of me is I've been doing this now for a little over 2 years, and I had no idea what was going on with TPA, TPP, and the Transatlantic Agreement. Enough to know that I didn't really want it to happen, but not enough to realize that if it passes, it basically could be the beginning of the end of our sovereignty, which is a very scary thought to me. It's like waking up and finally deciding, or it's like waking up and the coach finally putting you in the game and there's 3 minutes left on the clock and you're down by 70 points. What are you supposed to do? You know, it's just, I mean, I'm going to go down swinging, but I kind of feel like we're getting there, and that's what worries me.
It worries me, too, and Mr. Obama is a citizen of the world, not President of the United States, and he wants to take us along on his little journey of global governance, whether it's through cap and trade or laws like this or anything else, and turn us into a European-style democracy so we're all the same. And I say we're America, and we should remain unique and different. There's no reason to give up the American experiment yet, or American sovereignty, or American exceptionalism. It's not time yet, that's for sure.
No, it's definitely not. But I think that's what concerns me, though, is, I mean, even one of the hosts that we have here, Bryce Robbins, who does Finding Common Ground with me on Saturday mornings, he's a younger guy. I mean, he's I've got about 20 or so years on him, but he is big into the whole socialism thing. And one of the things that I've noticed is for the folks that are typically below 30, that's the first thing they want to talk about, is how great all of the other socialized countries in the world have it compared to us. And I wonder how much longer are we going to be able to keep this system in place when it seems like the younger generation just want to scrap it, and most of them have no interest in the Constitution. And even our leaders now, one of which is supposed to be a constitutional scholar, seems to want to do nothing but use it as birdcage liner.
Well, it's not the first time that these waves of populism have traveled across the globe. They're evident everywhere, and we have to to fight the good fight. It's a bit of brainwashing. It's a little bit of emotional and instability, if you ask me. And there isn't much, you have to realize, Rick, the socialist countries, for example, in Europe, couldn't be socialist without our military protection. They would have to be more capitalist so they could afford their own armies. Our defense of them allows them to spend their money on social services, okay? And that's what is being attempted in the U.S., trying to pare down our military to make room for the social programs. So we'll all be even in the end, and everybody will be poor, and everybody will be broke, and no one will be an exceptional country whatsoever.
Well, yeah, and you bring up a good point, and as we come to a close, I did kind of want to touch on that. It seems like after World War II, somebody came up with this great idea that we needed to be the world police, while at the same time trying to find ways to bring the rest of the world up to our economic level. And it didn't work. So sadly, what I think we are starting to see now is the reverse, where folks have figured out it's easier to tear something down than it is to build something up. And sadly, we are the thing that needs to be torn down, because if they can knock us down a few pegs, then we'll have to let somebody step in to clean up the mess. And I think a lot of that has been going on by design, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. I don't think Obamacare was an accident. He's actually been caught on tape saying something that should have ended his presidential run, but nobody found out about it until it was too late, and then they just didn't give a damn anymore. And that is the fact that he specifically, in front of cameras, told everybody that he did not support a single-payer system, and then a few days later, behind closed doors, told everybody that he does support a single-payer system. And that's exactly what he's been trying to do. This is the framework to get that started, and the only way to get that started is to attack the insurance companies, which is exactly why they're having the mess that they're having now. I don't think it's by accident. I think it's by design, and that's another thing that scares me, is in between this and the TPA-TPP situation, if we don't do something now, it's going to be too late really soon. And it saddens me that I finally woke up, because I wasn't that politically involved until about 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm really starting to wonder if I got in the game just a little too late, but I'm still going to keep trying.
Well, I'm glad you're in. And the fact of the matter is, Rick, whether anybody likes it or not across the world, I really don't care. The fact of the matter is that if America does good, America is the engine of the world. If it does good, the world does good. And we seem to have a government, a regime in place right now that's trying to change that fact.
All right, well, that does bring the show to a close, folks. This is Rick Robinson, and I have been spending the evening with Mr. Patrick Fornari. And again, apologies for getting your first name wrong earlier. For some reason, I put it in the link wrong, but again, I will fix that for you before I send you the link. That way you can do with it as you wish. It's been my pleasure. If you ever want to do this again, just hit me up. It's been a great time, and I look forward to hopefully maybe doing it again in the future. Maybe when you're at your next one. Come on,
Hey, I'd really love to talk to you again, Rick. I'll definitely get a hold of you.
All right. So just before we close, I know I'm running a little longer than I said I was going to. Any thoughts on another book? Any other books that you've got out? Is this the only one? Are you working on any more?
Yes, I am, and I have to, let's put it this way, I have to sell a few more of these books before I can entertain the idea of the next one fully. So, but it is in the works, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, hopefully maybe we can help you get some of those sold. Because again, folks, if you have not gotten it yet, as he said, you can get it on Amazon. You can find it, I believe I think it even has a hardcover edition, does it not? Or is it just paperback?
No, it's just the paperback, and you can, of course, get the ebook, and you can get it for different devices. And if you Google it, it's certainly on more than one link. You can get it on all kinds of different formats, languages, everything, all over the world.
All right, well, you heard it here, folks. Go grab it, read it. It's a great read. It's not. I mean, he's right. He did write it for the common American because it's not very long. It's honestly, the first time I read through it, I had it done in about a day and a half, and that was picking it up a couple hours at a time. So you can definitely
That's the idea.
Pretty quickly, and it's a great read. All right, Patrick, it's been my pleasure. At this point, we are going to have to go ahead and close the show because I got to make room for the folks coming on behind me. You want to do this again anytime, just hit me up.
Okay, thank you again. I really appreciate it, Rick. Talk to you soon.
Not a problem, sir. You have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. So again, that was Patrick Fornari, author of the Commoner Sense, the Working Person's Guide to America. This is Rick Robinson. I'm gonna have to cut it out of here because we got to make room for Bed Nation Rising coming on in just a couple of minutes. You guys have a great rest of your night. I'll be back here live with you tomorrow night on America Off the Rails. Thanks for everybody who's tuned in. If you're hearing this, make sure you go buy the book, folks. Let's show Patrick some love. I'll be back with you tomorrow.